Thank you for joining me tonight for another important topic. We're going to be talking about trauma. And I wanted to talk about this discussion with my mom. My mother has experienced so much in life. When you hear her story, you're going to think like, how did she even make it through? And I think God, she don't look like what she been through.
Praise the Lord.
My mother just turned 63 last week?
2 weeks ago today.
2 weeks ago. You see how my age? Yeah. I'm gonna look like that.
All right.
But she is known across the community as a mom to so many. I have had to share my mother with so many people, but I'm so grateful that I have the type of mother who loves and embraces anyone that comes into her sphere of influence. So please help me welcome my mother, Pastor Jackie Norris.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hello.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. So listen, you know, when you have your family do stuff for you, you usually don't go the extra mile. Mm-hmm. So she was like, I know you didn't prepare no questions for me, did you? And I was like, no, because I figured like we could just talk. So usually I prepare questions. But this time we're just gonna talk. We're gonna have a conversation. I learned about my mom's experience. Oh my gosh. Throughout my life, like she told us a little bit of kind of like her life journey, her life experience. And then a couple of years ago, maybe about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, she opened up a little more deeper about her life. And so we'll just jump right on in. So I would say for you, you started or didn't know that you were experiencing trauma when you were a kid.
No, I did not. I never heard the word at the time.
Yeah. So you were raised by your great-grandparents in Eudora, Arkansas. Shout out to all the Southern folks out there. But she was raised by her great-grandparents in Eudora, Arkansas. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Well, that experience was, I think it was like my foundation was being built because I can remember as a kid sitting around my grandparents' table. They had a dining room table with this lace tablecloth on it. And my grandfather would always read to me, and he would read to me out of the Bible. And then there was a swing on the porch. I'll never forget that swing. I always loved sitting on that swing. And we would sit there and we would have conversations. You know, and I was a very young child at the time. And he would read, and they would always read with me and instill the word of God in me back then. So at the age of, and I'm sure it had to be the age of 5, because I was born in Chicago. That's where I started. I was born in Chicago. For whatever reason, my mom saw fit to take me to my great grandparents, which was in Eudora, Arkansas, and I remember leaving there just before kindergarten. And I started kindergarten in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't raised with your mother or your father. What did that do for you as a child? You didn't start off being raised by her.
No, and at the time, being as young as I was, I really didn't. I didn't know. I didn't know I wasn't being raised by my parents. I just knew these were my grandparents, and that's where I started.
Yeah. So then something pivotal happened to you in your early age. Talk a little bit about that experience. You want me to hold your hand?
Oh, girl, I got it.
No. Got this, okay.
No, I remember, okay, like I said, I went to kindergarten in Chicago. I got a journey going on when I think back.
Yeah.
And I went to kindergarten in Chicago. And I remember those kindergarten days. And then for whatever reason, my mom decided to bring me to South Bend, to my grandparents here. And I stayed here for 1 year for first grade. And then after first grade, I went back to Chicago. And that's when all the trauma started. That's when the trauma started. I started being molested at 7. And that went on for years. It went on until I was about 14, 15 years old.
Mm.
So
that was, I'm sure Very traumatic.
Very.
You didn't tell us that.
No.
Until about
7 years ago.
7 years ago. My mom didn't tell us that. And I think a year before that is when I told my mom that I had been sexually abused.
Mm-hmm.
So I had held that for almost 30 years. How old am I?
No,
20 some, about 20 some years. I held mine for almost 20 some years, a little, maybe 25 years, because I had to share my testimony at a chapel series that I was asked to speak at, and God told me to talk about it. And so I knew that I couldn't get in front of 1,000 people and share that without having told my mother first. And so I told her right before I did that. And then a year later, she came out and said that she had experienced molestation for years, starting at the age of 7. And so that really shook me, because for me, then I saw it as, this is a generational curse. Exactly. And it was something that I was bound to break, because I have a daughter. She just turned 9 years old. So that was something that I was bound to break once I found out. Well, I was bound to break it before I found out that it was generational, but I didn't want that to happen to my child.
Exactly.
What did that experience do for you? Because I know what it did for me, and I didn't experience it for years like you did. And so I know the guilt and the shame that I carried over the years from that moment. Like, what was your thought process? How did you carry this? Like, talk a little bit about it.
Well, at first you start to blame yourself for things, and you carry that around. Like you said, it's guilt and it's shame, and it really got worse. The guilt and the shame got worse because I got pregnant, and then I had a child, and then you have people looking at you, this little 14-year-old girl running around here with this baby, and then you don't say anything. You just let them believe whatever it is they want to believe. And that's why I believe that you shouldn't judge people because of what you see, because you never know the backstory behind that. And so for years I carried that with me, and I just said, whatever they wanted to believe, I let them believe that about me. So that was really difficult at times.
So you were 13 or 14 pregnant?
13, but I delivered when I was 14.
Okay, so you are a teenager, you're 13, you're 14 years old, and you're pregnant. What was the thought process of, do I keep my child? Do I get rid of the baby? Do I give it up for adoption? Like, what was the thought process of actually raising and having in your face all these years a reminder of what happened?
Well, it was for months. I didn't even know I was pregnant. And then I just got sick, really sick one day, and my mom took me to the doctor, and she found out I was pregnant. And I'm like, okay, now I'm pregnant. And I was so far along. And I never would have, even back then with the spiritual upbringing that I got from my grandparents, I never would have, abortion never crossed my mind, but adoption had crossed my mind. And then my final decision was, okay, I'm just gonna let the child be adopted. I'm gonna move on with my life and try to be a normal teenager. And that was my decision. And it didn't turn out that way, because I guess when you're gonna give your child up for adoption, they never let you see it. They never let you hold it. They just, just take the baby and go. And they brought her to me. And from that point on, I'm like, okay, I just can't just give her away. So I end up raising her, and with my mom's help. But during that, she was 2 years old, and then my mom passed away.
So now you're 16.
16.
A single mother experiencing all this trauma, and your mother passes away.
Yes.
Like, all of this is before 16.
All of this is before 16 years old. And like I said, trauma is so real, but me growing up, never, no one ever talked about therapy or getting you help. Even when my mom passed away, everybody looked to me as to plan this funeral. And I'm like 16 years old and I'm planning funerals and trying to, sort all this stuff out. And
then you had two younger siblings too.
Exactly. I had two younger siblings, and for the I actually took care of them too. After my mom passed away and going through this here process, they were at home with me because at that point my mom was a single mom then, and so they were at home with me. And none of my other relatives, I mean, they would check on us, but nobody. I didn't know behind the scenes what they were talking about doing, but they would check on us up until one of the relatives decided, well, he better move in with us, so because I mean, we needed an adult around.
Yeah. So I'm always amazed. When you talk about this, and this is like your second time really sharing, like publicly
yes,
sharing this, and I'm always amazed because you've been through a lot. And we'll get to the other stuff, but insert when I come in, and then I am growing up in a single parent household, and I see my mother struggle, and I often wonder, like, why did you love God so much? Like, why did you serve him with such fervor? Because as a young kid, I couldn't understand. Now I know why. I know it was nothing but the grace that you are here today.
Exactly.
But you experienced all of that from 2 years old, that you can remember, right? 2 years old.
I can go back.
5 years old.
No, I can go back as far as actually 3.
See, so like 3 years old, all the way up to 16, you're having these traumatic experiences as a young child without counsel, no one to talk to, no therapist to see. So then fast forward, later in your teenage years, you fall in love. Did you fall in love?
Let me just say this.
She fell for something.
I fell for something.
She fell for
But
something.
Let me just say this. If you're 18 years old, don't even think about marrying anybody, because this was right after my mom. Okay, let's back up.
All right.
My mom passes away, and then I have 1 year of high school left. I have 1 year in high school left. And my uncle moved in. This was, you know what? And I told you this before. It was so bizarre. They leave me with someone that's not really much older than me, and he was always the one that would help me out and when I was doing, stuff I shouldn't be doing back then. My pre-Jesus days. And then now he's supposed to be my authority figure. And I'm like, oh, how's this gonna work out?
Yeah.
But anyway, by the grace of God, I wasn't wilding out like that. But anyway, my mom passes away, leaving with him. I graduated from high school. And then after high school, basically growing up, I wanted a normal life. I'm like, okay, let me see if I can get this normal life for myself. So I get married. And
how old were you?
18.
18.
I was 18. I was 18 years old, trying to get this normal life for myself. They tell us to get a little white house and a little picket fence, have a couple kids, and life was great. Somebody told us tale, because life was not that great, not in that sense. Because I grew up, like I said, I was being molested, and then it was an abusive household because it was the stepfather that was the abuser and perpetrator, and he was abusing my mom, and he was physically abusing both of us. And I'm like, growing up, I'm like, so this is what marriage is. I can't get married because they beat you, they fight you. So I'm like, I can't do this. So, but I did get married at 18, but I determined nobody's going to do that to me. So I would fight. I'm like, you know.
So you said that you was determined for nobody to do that to you,
No.
but you fighting.
Oh, to keep them from doing it to me first. I guess that's the way I looked at it. But anyway, that was a real disaster. That was a real disaster. And I guess somewhere along the line, he must have fell in love or something, because he didn't want me to leave. You know, I said, well, you know, I'm getting out of here. This is just too much. I can be fighting. You know, this is just crazy. This is not the normal life that I was seeking. So then I get pregnant. I do have another child in this marriage, and take my child and I leave. And then for a while, for a long time, he didn't know where I was. And then when he found out, you know, they always come back. You know, I ain't gonna do it no more. It's gonna be. I'm sorry. It's gonna be all right next time. This time, da da da. You know, fell for it once. You fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So it was gonna be shame on me. So I decided, you know, I'm out. I'm gone. So then he comes and he tries to persuade me to come back, and his efforts was just, you know, useless, because I was determined that I was not going to go back into that again. And then so he decides to shoot me. Yes, shot.
Shot my mama.
Shot her mother.
Now, if you know Maya Angelou says, if someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Exactly.
If someone tells you, if I can't have you, nobody can.
Believe
them and run. Okay.
Believe them
and run. So you shot at 19?
I was 19? Shot. No. Wait a minute.
Running around these Chicago streets. Gangster.
Oh, me?
Well, you fight.
Well, it was my gun that he shot me with. Shot you with my own gun.
Come on, mama.
Yes. But he stole the gun. Well, he actually bought the gun for me for my protection.
And then he shot. It's funny now, but it ain't funny.
It's not funny. It's not. I can laugh at it now, by the grace of God. But he bought the gun for me for protection, and he just figured, you know, with my temper, he better take it back. So
you was a high-head?
Oh, you wasn't. I said I was not going to be abused. I was determined that I would not be abused.
Okay, so you like 19 shot.
No, I was actually 21.
So you're 20. So you're 21. You're shot, and then you're in the hospital for how long?
I have. Actually, to this day, I still do not know. I didn't even know I was in the world. That's not a collapse.
Because you were in a coma. So you were in a coma. Wasn't supposed to be here. Did you have a collapsed lung? Did you say that?
Collapsed lung.
A collapsed lung in a coma. This is pre Gina and Reginald. So you know it's a call on my life, and she done been through that. Come on, somebody, and I'm here.
Exactly.
And you still got the bullet in you.
I still have the bullet in me.
Child.
Yes. And sometimes I go through security in some places
and it go off.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, Mom.
Yes.
So all of this up until 21.
All of that.
All of this trauma.
All of this trauma.
Okay. So then you moved back to South Bend in 70.
No, I was shot here.
You were shot here?
Yes. At Grandma's. I was shot here. He came all the way here? He came all the way here to just persuade me to come back, and I refused to go.
He shot you here?
He shot me here.
Girl, I thought you were still in Chicago.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Okay. So you're already here, and then you meet the love of your life.
Oh gosh.
My daddy.
Yes, I meet him.
So you meet my dad. You guys get married in 1980, and then you have me the summer of 82, and then in December of 82, life changes again.
Life changes again.
So what happened?
We were at my mother-in-law's. My mother-in-law had this gentleman that lived at her house that she rented a room to, and I was in the bedroom changing you, and your dad was watching a basketball game, and this is a Saturday basketball game, and your grandma had a visitor over. One of her friends they were over, and they were sitting in the kitchen like they used to do back in the day. And
a gentleman caller?
No, it's not a gentleman caller. Not your grandmother. I don't think so. But anyway, but on that day, it was not a gentleman caller. And they were sitting and chatting and having, talking to each other. And all of a sudden, we heard all this noise. And after the noise, we heard these gunshots. And then your grandmother's friend said, oh my God, he shot her. So out of reaction, your dad, he says, stay here. He jumps up and he goes down to see what's going on. And the gentleman shot him too. And then after he shot him at close range. So at this point, I'm like, what is going on? So I leave you, which after I thought about what I did, I'm like, oh my God, my child's upstairs. But I run downstairs to see what's going on. So then the guy, he comes and shoots your dad just like point blank as he's laying there on the floor. So at that point, I run out of the house to try to get help. But of course, the lady had already called for help. And then I'm thinking by that time, because the police were here, or was there on the scene then, and then I'm trying to get back in to get you out, but they wouldn't let me back in.
So I was 5 months old and you were pregnant with Reginald.
Exactly.
And then you become a single mother again of 4 kids.
Exactly.
2 years into your marriage, and then life shifts.
Life shifts again.
When did you deal with everything that you went through? Like, what was the process of dealing with that?
Well, like I said, back then, nobody talked about therapy or, we prayed about everything. And you just learn to pray about everything, you dealt with everything like that. And that's good, because you need Jesus. I wouldn't have come this far without him. But we really need to push therapy, because I remember one time, and it was after Reginald was born, and after all this had gone on, and it was such a taboo. People were like, well, you must be crazy or something. If you gotta go, you want to see somebody, yeah, be crazy. So I made an appointment, because I said, I got to get I got to talk to somebody. And I made the appointment. I went to the appointment. I sat in the area, the waiting area, and did my little paperwork, and then I just left.
Why?
Because I just felt like you shouldn't be here, because it was still that stigma. It was that stigma. You can't. I mean, you must be crazy or something if you going to therapy. So I left, and then I continued to see God and pray about it, and do what I was taught to do spiritually. And then probably maybe about 8 years ago, I said, you know what? I've dealt with so much, and then too, and I started working with kids with trauma, and then that was the other thing. I'm like, oh my God, and it didn't. There's like triggers, certain triggers and stuff, and so I said, I'm going to therapy, and
just 8 years ago.
Just 8 years ago.
Wow. So, what do you think has carried you from all those years up until 8 years ago when you decided to go to therapy?
My faith.
Your faith.
My faith. Because if I know one thing, that's that God is real, and for me to come this far without, because I didn't even tell my friends this stuff. I told one of my friends, we were talking, I don't know how the conversation came up, but I told her about me getting shot, and she looked at me like she didn't know what to do. She was like, "You've been shot." I'm sitting here talking to somebody that's been shot. She said, "I heard about people getting shot. I've seen the news where people been shot." She said, "I never know." And she said, I would have never known that. And but it's all been God. It's been God. Never let anybody tell you that God is not real, because he's real in my life, because all this stuff. And usually I don't think about it in the terms of you do, because she thinks this is such an amazing story. I just think this is the life I've lived.
I guess because you're my mom, and hearing your story, I now understand your strength and where it comes from. And you've always been like this strong person, and I didn't see you cry too many times growing up. I heard you pray a whole lot. Like, I will come into my mom's room at night, almost every night, and she is either reading the Bible or she is on her knees praying down heaven. And it got to a point when I was a teenager, I wouldn't lock the door because she would come and pray and lay hands on everybody in the house. And one day I was like, "Oh Lord, she about to come in this room." I went and locked the door.
She was wrong for that.
I locked the door because I was like, "Not today, Mom. It'll come through the door."
She was so wrong for that. And then she encouraged her brother to do that. You told Reggie, you should
like lock the door. But I understand your strength now. Like, I didn't know all that you had went through. Like, I didn't come into the picture until 82, so I didn't know all the other stuff that you went through, because you really didn't share too much growing up. But I would see you struggle as a single mother. I would see you sacrifice for us. Like, my mother loved what was the store called?
Casual Corners.
Casual Corners. And every Saturday we got up listening to Levert. That was our insert. It was time to get up and clean so she could get to her hair appointment. And then after she left her hair appointment, we would always go to Casual Corner and she would try on clothes. And so I remember you buying clothes from Casual Corners, and then like we come home talking about we got a project or it's a field trip we need. And then I remember you taking those clothes back to the store so that we could afford to go on those trips. I remember having garage sales. We selling our old clothes for money, and you putting patches in our clothes. Like, growing up, like I seen you struggle, and I seen the sacrifice that you made, and that was all I saw. And I used to wonder, like, why you serve God? Like, if he really loved us, like we wouldn't be living like this, and you wouldn't have to be struggling the way that you struggle. Like, that was my mindset growing up. Like, why do you love God so much? But I didn't understand the other, or didn't know the other things that you went through. So now I have like kind of like the total story, and I'm just like, my God, like you wouldn't have made it to 63 if it had not been for God.
Oh no, definitely not.
As your source and your strength, like you should have been crazy. Like,
you know what? Speaking of that, I was driving down the street one day, and this was probably about maybe 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And my bishop, he always says there's three voices that you hear. You hear yours, you hear the devil's, and you hear God's. And I knew this was the devil clear as a bell, because he said to me, "You should be dead or crazy right now after all the stuff I've done to you." And I'm like, excuse me? You know, and I said, you know what? And like she said, I was praying and fighting demons all the time, you know, just because he, you know, I tell her that it was God. This was a plan. It was his divine plan, because my plan was never to stay in South Bend. I was like, as soon as they get grown, I'm heading back to Chicago. I'm gone.
She's still trying to get back to Chicago. She watched that news. She get alerts on her phone for Chicago. And I'm like, you don't live there.
But you know, I love Chicago. It's my home. But I always tell her, it had to be God's divine plan, because even after your dad died, and it was a few years in, I did try to move back. I was making little plans to go, and it was like, it was always something. I was like, oh my God, I gotta stay here.
That you gotta stay here. Aren't you glad you stayed?
I am. I really am. You know, Chicago's about an hour away, so I can always get there. Yeah. But yeah, it pays to listen to the Lord. It is
Tell people that
if you operate outside of the will of God, you only ask for trouble. So it really pays to operate in the will of God. And never think, you know, I mean, I'm sitting here, I take no credit. It's a miracle. It's a miracle because God, I mean, I love me some Jesus. I tell anybody, I love me some Jesus. Now, you're not going to talk me out of that. But if, you know, just because you go through things, don't let those things define who you are. Because I was determined that I was going to raise my children and push them and give them the push that I never got. I mean, because in my head, I always wanted to be a lawyer and go to law school. But there was nobody telling me that I could really do this. I was just watching this on TV, and it was just like stuff on TV. And I said I would never let them be robbed of their dreams, because, you know, let them try to do, if she had come home and said, I want to, she did. You did come home with a flute one day.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, play the flute.
That was
you know,
short-lived.
Yes, it was very short-lived. But I always try to support their dreams no matter what. Even with my son, he's a drummer. And I said, if he was just standing there holding the sign, if he's, I'm gonna be right there cheering you on. Front row, cheering them on, because I never had anybody to push me and say, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. I had, you know, I would thank God for, like I said, my great grandparents, because they gave me that foundation. And because I found that church was a refuge for me. And going through all the trauma, church was a refuge for me. I stayed in church. There was times and days that I would go all by myself. I'd take my sister and brother there. They were much younger than me, so I would be taking them to church and getting the word of God in me. And then a lot of times I just wanted to be there, just be in the presence of God. It always did something for me, especially knowing what I was dealing with at home, and nobody else knew what I was dealing with, but I was always so happy to be in church.
I was glad when
they said unto me,
so Baptist, let her go into the house of the Lord.
Oh yes. And there's joy and peace there too.
Oh, okay.
Come on now, Jesus. Yes. So,
Mom, so encourage the people out there. There may be somebody who's watching who is going through a traumatic experience or just starting to deal with trauma. I want you to encourage those out there.
Okay, if you're dealing with trauma, or if you have a situation in your life, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be ashamed to go get help. It takes a lot of strength and courage to walk through those doors or tell somebody you need help. Surround yourself with good people, you know, people that will encourage you, that won't look down on you, and you can feel safe with them sharing your experiences and stuff. And just don't be afraid. Just know that you know, I'm better than this. I am not what I'm going through. Don't, like I said earlier, don't let that define who you are. I was today reading about when Samuel went to Jesse's house to anoint David as king, and when he went there, he automatically thought, because the first sons came in and they, you know, they tall, they look good, this, that, and the other, and you know, they just gotta be. But I had this message, and I prepared this message a long time ago. Never preached it, but I prepared it, and it was called "What About the One in the Yard?" And it's David was the one out. He was tending sheep, and you know, they just felt like he was just this little sheep boy, and there's no way he could be king. But the oil wouldn't touch none of the others, but it ran on David. And just because you think what you're going through, or what you've been through, or who you are, or who your family is, or what type of family or home you came out of, never think you can rise above that. Because David was this little guy out here keeping these sheep, and he became king. So know that there's some strength in you, and don't give people your power. Take your power back, you know, and the way you do that is get yourself some help. You go to therapy. I love my therapist. I mean, I love mine too. I love a therapist because sometimes you just need to just go there and just you can go there and just say whatever you want to say. It's a safe space. You can say whatever, and you don't have to worry about your business getting out. Because a lot of times, you think you got a good friend, Twitter, talking about you, and you're like, how did that get out there? So find you a good therapist and sit there and cry and boo and do whatever it is you need to do. And if you go and you find the first one didn't fit, keep trying. Keep trying, because somebody's out there, and just don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your dreams.
Talk a little bit about forgiveness.
Oh, I had to do a lot of that. I had to do a lot of that because going through all the trauma that I had to go through, even coming up as a little kid. And hate is really a strong word, but I hated that man. I hated his guts. But I had to reach down inside of me and to find forgiveness because I didn't want my blessings to be hindered. And because you carry all that around and people going on about their business. You still hurt and bitter and angry and stuff, but you have to let that go. You have to let that go because I made up in my mind that you and the mess that you try to put me through is not going to keep me from my reward with Jesus. Because he's been too good to me. So you have to find it in your heart to forgive. And I'm not saying it's easy because it took me a while to get to that place. It took me a while to get to that place, and only by the grace of God, I made it there to forgive, because I was like, nope, if I see you, I got something for you. I got something for you, but you have to forgive. Because forgiveness is not for them, it's for you.
Yes, it's not for them, it's for you. That's so good, Mom. I know you have a heart for single mothers. And there may be some single mothers out there who are watching this, and just encourage the single mothers out there.
You know what? Like I said before, you have the strength within you. If you connect with God, you have the strength within you to make it. Like she said, a lot of times you'll have to sacrifice. Pray over your children. They used to get upset because we would pray before they would go to school, and they're like, "We're gonna miss the bus." Well, I'll have to take you because
she pulling down strongholds. We trying to get on the bus.
Cover your kids in prayer, and just trust God. Trust God. As a wise person once told me, especially when your kids started getting older, this older person told me, she says, you know what? You pray over your babies when they're at home, and so when they're away, they'll be protected. And then once they walk in the door, start thanking and praising God. So you always want to keep your children covered in prayer.
To this day, she keeps us covered in prayer. She got her oil in her bag. Anytime we get a new vehicle, if we bring it over there, she got her oil, putting it on the car. We go out of town, she trying to put oil on us. Like it's serious around here. She don't play in these streets.
President will ask you, did you put that oil on my seat? This little drum seat, you have to be anointed. We playing for Jesus. You silly. We playing for Jesus. Here.
Even at the club, Reginald, we playing for Jesus. You're so silly. Is there any last thing, anything you want to tell the people before we end our broadcast?
I just want you to stay encouraged. I want you, if I went through everything that I've gone through and made it to be 63 years old, it's because the devil tried to take me out several times. But God said, because he had work for me to do. So you get about your Father's business and don't be discouraged. Don't, people tell you can't. With Jesus, you can. Just keep God in the forefront of everything that you go to do. And, like I said, love your babies, wrap your arms around your children, support them. Like I said, they may not, she took that flute back because she knew that wasn't for her. But I was gonna cheer her on. So, don't tear them down. Do not tear your babies down. Even at school, my son, he's a drummer and he hit on everything that he saw, and he still does that. And many a times I had to go to school and defend him because of his hands and for being so busy. But
she should have popped in the hands. The boy's spoiled.
Oh no, he's not.
He probably in the comments talking crazy.
No, he's not. But encourage your children. Like she said, I have a heart for single moms and children. To encourage your children, no matter what it is. You're gonna be mad and screaming and yelling, but they're doing something crazy. So if they do something positive, you encourage them and support them, and just love the Lord. Just love God, and because God loves you, and there's nothing that you can't obtain if you keep God first.
Okay, so I was gonna end this.
I
was gonna end this, but she said something, and then like something else popped up because she was like, "You said, he loves you. God loves you." How did you come to terms with that?
Did God love me?
Yes, with everything you went through.
I'm
still trying to figure this out.
Because he kept bringing me out. He kept bringing me out of mess. He brought me out of mess that I got into. He got me out of. I mean, he proves himself. He proves himself over and over again. I couldn't, like the devil tried to tell me I should be crazy, and here I am, as sane as I can be. As sane as I can be. God just proves himself all the time. I mean, he's a miracle worker. He's a miracle worker, because the song says, as I look back over my life,
she's about to get happy.
And I think things over. I could truly say, what is this? That's 2 songs?
I know what you just did. What'd you say? That's the same one. Bria, you watching? None of the words. As I look back over my life, and I think
I got to say, I'm blessed.
I got a testimony.
I got a testimony. Okay. I got a testimony, and he brings me out all the time. And sometimes I sit back and laugh at some of the stuff he brings me out of. Because my mother used to always tell me that the Lord takes care of old people and fools. And so some of those things I have to laugh at. But God is amazing. And like she says, I love me some Jesus. And she wouldn't be here today if I didn't love God the way I love him. Because I came home one day and we were having revival at church, and we, back then you went to church on Monday, we went to church Wednesday, and then on Sundays all day, and then when revival, it was all week.
Yeah, choir rehearsal on Friday.
Yeah, choir rehearsal, not all. We were there all the time, and she told me, she was quite kind of like that little boy said, "I'm tired of this church." She said, I don't feel like going. I'm like, excuse me?
It was a job, okay?
You don't what?
Church was a job.
Oh, honey, we don't miss church. No, we're not gonna miss church. And
when I was a teenager, when she used to let me go out, she would say, "You can go, but you better be the first one dressed for church." And the next day, and sure enough, because I wanted to keep going up, I have to be the first one dressed. And then they got to shooting at some of the events. So I was making sure I was the first one dressed like her to get to church and praise the Lord that I didn't get shot.
And she wanted to lock the door when I was praying. The prayers.
Well, thank you, Mom.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. I'm trying to get her to write her book because I'm like, you retired now. You can get this book out of you. Like, I want you to tell your story. Your story needs to be told. I need her to tell it before I start telling it. I'll be like, let me tell you about my mama. I really need you to write this book, get it out there for the people so you can help people out. And it's part of your ministry. Just because you're in retirement don't mean like this is it. Like it's something else. It's a book in you, woman.
It's a book. It's a book. I think I got the title, but I won't tell you.
See, it's already in the works. So continue to pray for my mother. And she's gonna continue to pray for y'all. For those of you that is watching and you're saying you need some oil, especially those that go to Faith. She got a stash at the church. So when you see her on Sunday, tell her you need that oil and she'll get you some oil.
Yes, I believe in that oil. Leaving oiling up my babies.
Well, thank you so much, Mom, for coming and sharing your story. Next week, we're going to continue the discussion on trauma, and I will have two special guests with me, two therapists, talking about ways to deal with trauma. I wanted my mom to come and share her story and talk a little bit about how she made it through. And a lot of it was her faith. Like she said, 8 years ago, she just started to see therapy. But we are trying to break that stigma about going to see a therapist. And so I'm going to have two therapists on next week so we can talk a little bit more about how you can find a mental health counselor and mental health or mental wellness. So please join me next week at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you all for listening.
You did good, Mom. I'm proud of you, Anna Mae.